that the 50 basis point cut could have been political in the sense that Powell knows that the next cut comes around the time of the election, that he may not be in a position to be able to do it. So maybe he front-loaded some of those cuts. But furthermore, he made another interesting point, and this is what I want to ask you, because you've also, I think, suggested something similar in your tweets, which is that under a Trump administration, Jay Powell may be cutting a lot less. Not because he has a problem with Donald Trump, but because Donald Trump's policies, as they have been enunciated, are inflationary. So I'm curious to know what your thoughts are about a Trump 2.0 administration. If Donald Trump were to come into office, how do you handicap that as an investor? And what type of economy and what impact would that have on financial markets, do you think, based on what we know he has said he wants to do?
I think from an investor's perspective, you want to be careful to, let's say, extrapolate campaign rhetoric into policy establishment. And so I'm always hesitant to do too much in terms of projection of what's going on. And in general, if you look back through time, even something as sort of concrete as the Trump tax cuts, like you could have waited until it was pretty obvious that it was going to happen before taking bets on who would be the winners and the losers as a function of that and in generating alpha.
Let's also tell people I'm off the top of my head, I wish I'd actually written it down, but I'm pretty sure 10% across the board tariffs is something that he has said that he wants to do. And am I right in thinking that he wants to do 50% on China, or is that
60% on China?
Yep. 60%. And so that seems highly implausible. So I'm with you. But anyway, I wanted to just tell our listeners what some of the numbers are that I have in my head.
Yeah, and that's right. And that level of tariffs would put us at a level of tariffs that we haven't seen in
100 years.
I would say the post-World War II economies. But to be clear, it's not an unheard of level of tariffs in the sense of there are definitely plenty of economies that hold tariffs at that level, or goods in the U.S. context that are tariffed at that level. So it's not an impossibility. And in fact, President Biden implemented a series of tariffs at that level as well, de minimis in terms of size, but implemented various tariffs at that level as well. And so I think we're in a story. The idea of moving 10% tariffs on all goods, all imported goods, and 60% on China would likely have, several points of CPI inflation as a consequence. And that would be, relatively substantial impact. And the reason why that is that prices on those goods would likely immediately rise to reflect the tariff cost, since in most cases, imported goods do not have domestic production capabilities, particularly if you think about lower value added imported goods. I don't know, like laundry baskets and, plastic toys and stuff like that.
Big pens.
Big pens, all that stuff. None of that stuff's produced, or very little of it's produced in America, and there's very little supply chains that are created. So you'd almost directly see a pass-through effect of it. As you start to get to more sophisticated goods, let's say automobiles and things like that, there's more ability to generate supply. Although, because companies generally have productive capacity in line with their demand, it's challenging to spin up additional supply. So a reasonable assumption is a pretty much direct pass-through effect of the tariffs on prices.